Welcome back to Cards and Comics, and today I've got a follow-up video to my SGC to PSA um, video I did, and people wanted to see the actual cards, so I went through my collection and found every card I have remaining, including some that are still in the raw state, and wanted to show them off and kind of do a side-by-side comparison to the scans I have of anything I had, that I kept from a scan perspective back in 2017 and 2016, around the time period of these this experiment, so to speak, was happening. So I do have quite a few of the cards left in my collection, and I do have a couple of the raw cards. Now I'm going to start with a card that was not in the video. It actually was a submission in 2018, and if you look at it, so we'll start out with that card because it was an SGC 84, and it came back altered, and so this is how it was, sent back to me. And I'll show you the edges here, and this is where I think PSA is. If I can get a focus here. There we go. So this is where I think PSA is focused on. So look at this edge, and what I think you see here is under this magnification, you see how it kind of goes down a little bit. So the classic way you can tell trimming is, not a straight edge, but you get what they call the bat wing, or you get kind of the U shape. So this edge is a little suspect from that perspective. But if you look on the back here, where you've got this back edge, get a focus here. Here we go. This is where I think on this leading edge here, this is the side of the card. On top is the wide border. You gotta remember this card. If you saw it on the other side, you saw that you had one wide and one short border. This is the edge, I think, really is where PSA is questioning more than that top edge. I think the top edge looks a little suspect, but this part right here, when you can kind of see how there's a roll there on that edge, see how it's not really straight, it kind of rolls across. That is another sign that trimming could have taken place. And so it's not perfectly straight. You see it kind of dip there in the middle and kind of rolls over. So I feel like, this card 100 times would get flagged by PSA now as being trimmed. And so again, I think, whether or not a card was trimmed, how the card was cut, maybe this is just the weirdness of it, but with those telltale signs, that rolling on that edge, the dipping in the middle of that, border or straight edge, they're never going to give this card a straight grade, in my opinion. I could send it in the next round of grading just to double check. But in general, I haven't seen those kind of things successful, when you got those kind of telltale signs. The next card was in the submission. So this is the 1960 Ernie Banks. So this card, hold on, I'm just trying to pull it up here. So this card was sent in the very last grading order in December of 2017. And so if you look at it from a visual standpoint, it looks beautiful. And this card really hurts me because of how pretty and the colors are, right? So you get up close to it. And so they're saying it's trimmed. That's what PSA is saying, that this card is trimmed. And again, on that edge, you see a little bit of a bat wing on that corner where it flares out a little bit. And again, that's something PSA looks for. That edge, I don't see much of a problem on that edge. Maybe somebody in the video can kind of, sorry, let's get the camera focused. And this edge looks good to me as well. I think, they're concerned with that corner I was showing you before. Um, right there, where you're seeing that flare and that little bit of a dip in that middle, where it's, just doesn't look even as it goes across that edge and then that corner flares out. Yeah, and I think they flag this kind of stuff every time. This card's beautiful. I mean, it's a really nice raw card. I mean, it looks really crisp and really bright in color. But um, I've tried this card twice as well, and it comes back trimmed every time. And again, it was an SGC 88. Okay, so the next card I've got is I made a mistake. So I will want to say I want to correct a mistake I made. I said that this card had a crease and it didn't. So this card is the 1954 Red Heart Warren Spawn, and it graded 2 grades below. 7 to 4. Well, the way PSA views cards with qualifiers is that if you go to your set registry, they view them as 2 grades below the unqualified grade. So that's how I valued or viewed the grade. So this card came back a 6 MC from a PSA 7, from an SGC 7, right? So on this side, it looks really beautiful, right? And I'm not, I kind of question the 6. I think this corner and how it kind of has that paper kind of pushed over the top of the corner may have got it the 6, but this is why it got the MC qualifier. Part of that baseball is missing, right? So PSA will always, if there is logos, script, parts of a drawing, if they're missing, the card gets an MC, a miscut. And so part of the baseball is missing on this card. And therefore, it's going to 100% of the time get the MC qualifier, which, according to me and other people who do set registries, and just how valuations go, this card's worth about what a PSA 4 is worth, not a PSA 6 or a PSA 7. So again, I think this card is going to be valued in that PSA 4 range. And again, this is not hard to catch. Okay, catching that part of this baseball is cut off is pretty much something that anybody can just see with their eyes. And I don't understand why SGC would miss something that easy to catch. And that's, again, that was some of the video's point was those 2 cards before where their PSA is calling trimmed. I can see where they're seeing it. I don't. On the Banks, I'm more dubious about. The Kiner definitely has more telltale signs, but the Banks, that definitely, to me, it's but it's a good card, and this is what you got to understand too with PSA, and it's fair or foul. Big cards like that card, and it's a pretty expensive card now. They're going to err on the side of caution if they think there's something wrong with it, or it could be something wrong. They're going to just give it the old evidence of trimming because they don't want dubious cards like that in holders. And I think that's going to be a card that's going to be very difficult to get through for a mere mortal like myself, for sure. So here's the card. I've showed this a few times, but I've got a scan to kind of show the original card. And yeah, here you go. And you can kind of see the original scan next to it. There you go. So that crossed over from an 8 to a 9. So that definitely was good for me. Now the next card up was a card rated a 5. So let's see if we can figure out what happened here. Well, I know, because I looked at this one earlier. Here you go. And when I say the holders do damage, so this is where the damage occurs, right there. So there is a lot of scuffing and damage right there. And This was where the SGC insert was scuffing the back of the card. And so um, you can see that when you look at it, it's hard to kind of see here, but there's paper missing in that little bit of scuffing. And so basically that whole dark recessed area is where it was rubbing inside that SGC holder along that insert, and it removes some of the paper, and now the card has paper loss, and it gave it a 5. And a little bit of rubbing there, and I mean I don't know if it's that full paper loss because that usually gives it even worse grades, but that amount of damage right there brought it down to a 5. So pretty tough. Um, I'm a pirate collector. It was for my pirate team set and World Series set. So next up is a Roy face. So this came back from, it was a 7 and it came back a 6. So there you go. I think the cards, I mean, it's a nice looking card. I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely a nice 6. I don't see, it's 1 grade. I don't see it being a egregious error. Here is the Pirate Team card, 57. I believe this was in the first order. I can't read. It's a PSA 8. So it went from an 8 to a 7. And again, not an egregious grade. It's a little off center. It's a nice card. And again, it's still a good grade. PSA 7 is a good grade for a 57. Team card, 63 Ron Sano. Yeah, it was an 8 and crossed over to an 8. There you go. It's a beautiful card. So one of the things, like how do I know that these are the actual cards? Well, when you get grades, obviously the serial numbers are all close to each other from the order. So the 69, I believe the 69 was also an 8, and that crossed over to an 8. So there you go. You can see on the back was really pretty. So these were just really nice cards. So again, these SGC cards were very nice. Now here's one that really hurt. The SGC 86 or 7.5, and it came back a 6. So let's look at this card, and okay, maybe there's a little ding on that corner. Okay. It's got really nice color, so that little ding, and let's see what the back looks like, because I don't think this had any wax. Okay. So there's a little bit of, see that kind of, how that edge looks. Maybe that they didn't like that, but I mean, it's 1.5 grades, and so I got this card from Baseball Card Exchange. They sell they sell cards as well as actual wax, which they're known for. And well, I mean, I'm assuming that's the reason that corner right there. I think it's a pretty rough grade. I mean, this one really hurt because going from a 7.5, because I thought this would cross over between a 7 and 8. The value of a 6 is just so much lower than a 7 or an 8 right now. Next up, 35 Diamond Stars, John Babich. So this was in a bunch of... So this went from a 5 to a 4.5. So whatever. I mean, it's half a grade lower. I don't think there's anything egregious about the grade or that this could have been higher. I think you've got this really blended corner. But there you go. There is the John Babich. So this was a 5 and it came back a 4.5. I think you could say that's a reasonable grade. 57 Warren Spahn. So this card hold on, was a 8 and crossed over to an 8. There you go. Just a really nice card. It's almost perfectly centered. It's really close. But yeah, there you go. And this is, like on you get the back centering where it's like 90-10, or these kind of things happen in these vintage cards. But again, 8-8. So that was thought that card was awesome. So here's another rough one, and this is hard to see. So hopefully I can show it to you. So this was a Bill Hallahan Diamond Stars that came back. I have it in my list as a 2, and again, this is has a qualifier. So this is a 4 MK. So the mark on this card is right there. So it looks like ballpoint pen right across the leg. I'm trying to find the actual. There it is. So it was just a straight 4, SGC 4, and PSA snagged that ballpoint mark right there. Yeah, so I don't know what you can say. I mean, it is what it is. So, yeah, so that one again, I think, was reasonable in terms of PSA saying it was different. Next up is some really nice T cards, and I think these were all got bumps. So we'll start here with the T206 Chief Bender with the El Principe de Gales back, which is not a I would say it's not a super rare back, but it's definitely more rare than normal. So right, so this was an SGC 3, and it came back a 4, and I'll just show it to you. And then you can kind of see it's a little off center, but it's great color. And there you go, there's the grade. And then you can see it's got the cool back. So again, it's in the mid rarity back, but it's more, I mean, definitely you don't see it as often as you see like Piedmont or Sweet Caporal. So, but it does have a premium associated with it. So it was nice to get that bump. Next up is the Chief Bender Piedmont. This is the portrait. And let me go back here. So it was a 3.5. And it crossed over from 3. It came back a 3.5. Yep. So this was a 3. It came back a 3.5, and it's got great color. And I think this was the good thing I always say about SGC cards is that the ones I usually bought had really nice color and gloss, and so they looked really nice for the grade. This one's really well centered, and then you can see the Piedmont back. So yeah, and obviously there is some corner wear, and then there is, I'm looking to see if there's a big crease in the card somewhere. There's something right along here. I don't know if you can kind of see it in the photo. It looks like, either a mark or something right there. And but again, this is really reasonable, and really, I mean, obviously if I had Cobbs and Cy Youngs that look like that, we'd all be pretty happy if all of our T cards looked like that. That were 3.5s. I think I would take a lot of cards from that set that looked like that. So very reasonable. So next up is the Trees and Back Bender. That went from a 3 to a 4. So again, another full point pop here. And again, it's a really nice bender. Good color. The bottom corners here, you got one that's actually still a little sharp. You got one that's starting to round. And the top two are definitely rounder. But I mean, this is definitely reasonable. And to me, I mean, SGC grades these cards a little harder than PSA. So yeah, I mean, this is where I was saying, like, for pre-war, your chances of getting bumps to me is much higher. Next up is the Brooks Robinson 8.5. and I believe that this was a 7. So this is one of the bigger bumps I got in the whole. This is a 1.5 bump, and um, you know, so then you got to kind of look at why did SGC think it was a 7, and yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't really know. So there you go. Maybe this edge, it's a little rough cut. I mean, rough cuts are not definitely detrimental um, to the grade in this time period. So yeah, I think this is a case where maybe SGC was a little tougher. So yeah, I mean, I'll take the 1.5 bump. I look at this card, and I don't think anyone would look at it and say like, "Oh, that's not a 8.5." If you didn't know it came from an SGC 7 holder, it doesn't look egregious to me um, outside of that holder. So next up is the Bob Gibson Psa 8. So this was an 8 and 8, and you know anyone who grades the set knows that um, that the the Bob Gibson is a tough grade from this set, and so you've got the Gibson here, fairly well centered. These cards are really tilted easily, and so this crossed over from an 8 to an 8. I don't see anything really wrong in the back. So again, I think good example of straight crossover. The next one was the Steve Carlton that came back in 8.5, and which we've talked about, or I've talked about a little bit about how 8.5 grades are just really rare from PSA. They don't like giving out the 8.5 grade. And so this came from an 8 to an 8.5. And there you go. I think it is definitely worthy of that 8.5 grade. It's pretty well centered, and it definitely has nice color and gloss. And then if you look at the back, it again has some brightness. This is on this whole thing here. It's on the plastic. So that's it. That's the card. So hopefully you see the cards, and some cards I had an issue with that PSA hammered. You can see kind of why they did some of them. Some of them, like that 60 Banks, I'm a little questioning that one, but it is what it is. And but you saw some things that SGC missed. I think all graders miss things. So I'm not saying that they're horrible, because obviously a lot of cards did cross over, but that gives you kind of a flavor for what PSA was looking at, what the cards graded, why they didn't like some of them. SGC missing the miscut, the pin mark. Those are things that you would think that they would catch. So we'll see if they've gotten better. I'll do this again when PSA opens up some lower tier grading in the future, and we'll see how they do. And I'll talk to you next time.